Monkey and heat on the parallel bars. Yeah!
For decades, this was the story everyone believed. Joan Rivers, the acid-tongued queen of comedy, told one joke so outrageous that her mentor, Johnny Carson, banned her from The Tonight Show forever. It's a simple, dramatic story. A comedian, paying the ultimate price for being too funny. It's the kind of story that just sticks because it feels like it should be true in the cutthroat world of showbiz. But that's not what happened. The truth isn't about a single punchline. It's not about a joke that went too far. The real story is so much more complicated, more personal, and honestly, a lot more painful. It's a story about a secret multi-million-dollar deal, a single, fateful phone call, and a betrayal so deep it would create a rift between two of television's biggest icons. A rift that would last for nearly 30 years, define their legacies, and reveal the brutal heartbreak hiding behind the brightest stage lights. This isn't the story of a scandalous joke. It's the story of what Johnny Carson considered the ultimate betrayal. To really get the depth of this fallout, you have to understand the kingdom. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, American television had one undisputed king, Johnny Carson. The Tonight Show wasn't just a talk show. It was a nightly ritual for tens of millions of people. It was the center of the entertainment universe. Just getting on the show was a huge deal. But getting a laugh from Johnny, earning that famous wave to come sit on the couch, that was everything. That one gesture could turn a struggling comic into a household name overnight. Carson was more than a host. He was a gatekeeper, a star maker, and to many a pretty intimidating figure. Raised in Nebraska, he had this Midwestern coolness that masked a deeply private and guarded personality. He was famously hard to get to know. His trust was rare, earned slowly, and could be lost in a second. In Hollywood, where allegiances change like the weather, Carson valued one thing above almost everything else: loyalty. His approval was like sunshine, but he could take it away without warning, plunging a career into a cold, permanent shadow. By the 1980s, Johnny Carson wasn't just on TV. He was TV. And in his court, one jester seemed destined to inherit the throne. Her name was Joan Malinsky, but the world would know her as Joan Rivers. She came from a world away from Carson's Nebraska, the daughter of Russian Jewish immigrants. She was a brash, whip-smart girl from Brooklyn who clawed her way through the comedy trenches. Her early career was just a brutal series of rejections. She performed in grimy clubs, passed a hat for pay, and slept in her car, all while facing down the sexism of an industry that had no idea what to do with a woman who wasn't just funny, but also aggressive and unapologetically honest. For years, she struggled while guys like George Carlin and Woody Allen found success. She was rejected from The Tonight Show 7 times. She was on the verge of quitting, totally beaten down. Then, in 1965, she got the call. She wasn't even booked as a comic, but as a funny girl writer. She walked onto that stage, a bundle of nerves and ambition, and something electric happened. She connected with the audience, but more importantly, she connected with the king. Carson was genuinely, uncontrollably cracking up. As she finished, he looked right into the camera and said the 7 words that would change her life forever. "God, you're going to be a star." And just like that, he was right. That night in 1965 wasn't just a big break. It was the start of one of the most dynamic relationships in TV history. Johnny didn't just give Joan a platform, he became her champion. He had her on the show, again and again, almost 100 times over the next 2 decades. Their chemistry was undeniable. She was one of the only people who could consistently break through his cool exterior and make him double over in laughter. She was a firecracker, and he loved it. Joan, for her part, was endlessly grateful. She saw Carson as her mentor, the man who had single-handedly rescued her from obscurity. "He handed me my career," she would say over and over. Their bond deepened. Off-screen, too. Johnny even introduced her to her future husband and manager, Edgar Rosenberg. He became a father figure, not just a boss. It was the classic mentor-protege story playing out for millions to see. That bond was cemented in 1983. By then, Carson's contract gave him a lot of time off, and the show needed a star to keep the seat warm. So he made a huge decision. He named Joan Rivers the permanent guest host of The Tonight Show, the only person to ever officially hold that title. This was no small thing. In the world of late night, this was basically an anointing. It was Carson publicly declaring that Joan was his chosen one. When Johnny was away, Joan was in charge of the kingdom. The move made her a megastar. Her catchphrase, "Can we talk?" was everywhere. To the public, and probably to Joan herself, it seemed like a clear signal. She wasn't just a guest anymore, she was the heir apparent. When the day came for the king to finally retire, who else? But his most loyal and successful protege would take his place? It seemed like a sure thing. But behind the scenes at NBC, a different story was unfolding, and a rival network was about to start a war. In the mid-'80s, the TV landscape was shifting. The big three networks had run the show for decades, but a new player was entering the game. The Fox Broadcasting Company, backed by Rupert Murdoch and Barry Diller, was getting ready to launch. To do that, they needed to make a huge splash. Their main target? The most stable and profitable part of television, late night. The plan was bold. Launch a show to go head-to-head with the untouchable Tonight Show. And to do that, they needed a host with serious star power. They needed Joan Rivers. At the same time, Joan was starting to feel insecure at NBC. Despite her popularity and her official title, her future felt shaky. Carson was in his early 60s but showed no real signs of retiring. Joan, in her 50s, knew all about the ageism and sexism in TV. Her contract negotiations with NBC became tense. When Carson's contract was renewed for 2 years, hers was only for 1. That stung. The tipping point came when a supposed list of Carson's potential successors, prepared by NBC execs, was leaked. There were 10 names on it. Joan Rivers was not one of them. It was a devastating blow. After years of loyalty, after turning down other offers out of respect for Johnny, she was faced with the crushing idea that the network, and maybe even her mentor, didn't see her as the future. She was the permanent guest host, but it seemed she was only ever meant to be the understudy. It was in this moment of doubt that Fox made their move. The offer they put on the table was staggering. They offered her The Late Show starring Joan Rivers, which would make her the first woman in history to host her own major network late-night talk show. The money was just as huge, a contract reportedly worth $10 to $15 million. And there was another crucial part. They also offered her husband, Edgar, a job as the show's producer. For Joan, this was more than a job. It was a chance at history. It was security. It was the ultimate validation. After a lifetime fighting for a seat at the table, Fox was offering her the whole restaurant. Her husband, Edgar, who was also her manager, pushed her to take it. He argued that loyalty was a two-way street, and NBC had shown none. Then he gave her a piece of advice that would prove to be catastrophic. Don't tell Johnny until the deal is signed. He worried that if she told Johnny and the Fox deal somehow fell through, she'd be left with nothing. Joan was torn. She agonized over it, terrified of being seen as disloyal, but the opportunity was just too big. She later said she truly believed that Johnny, as a businessman, would eventually understand. She thought once she had the chance to explain, he would give her his blessing. It was a fatal miscalculation of Johnny Carson's personality, his profound need for loyalty, and his absolute hatred of being betrayed. After agonizing, she made her choice. She secretly signed with Fox. The fuse was lit. Before we get to the phone call that destroyed the most powerful friendship in late night, do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the stories we have coming up. The ink on the Fox contract was barely dry, but secrets don't last long in Hollywood. Before Joan could tell Johnny herself, the news started to leak. Panic set in. She knew she had only a few hours before Carson heard it from a news report instead of from her. The one thing she wanted to avoid was now happening. She had to call him. Now. The exact details have been debated, but Joan's version of the story, told for years with genuine regret, is chilling. She got Johnny's private number and dialed, her heart pounding. This was the man who discovered her, a father figure whose approval meant everything. This call would define the rest of her life. According to Rivers, she got him on the line. She was nervous and excited, trying to rush out the words. "Johnny," she began, "I have my own show on Fox." There was no yelling, no argument, just cold, dead silence. And then, a click. He hung up on her. Stunned, she thought it had to be a mistake, a bad connection. It was unthinkable. She called back, click. He hung up on her a second time, and that was it. In two simple, brutal gestures, a 20-year friendship was over. Johnny Carson would never speak to Joan Rivers again. For the rest of his life until he died in 2005, he kept his silence. If they were in the same room, he would turn his back. It was a total, complete excommunication. Carson's camp later told a different story, claiming he never got a call from her at all and that he learned about her show from the press, which, in his mind, was even worse. A Tonight Show producer said Joan had been on the show just the week before and said nothing about a competing show. To Carson, this wasn't business. It was personal. He had let her into his inner circle, and in his view, she repaid him by secretly planning to go to war against him in his own time slot. Joan later speculated on his reaction. "I think he really felt because I was a woman that I just was his, that I wouldn't leave him," she wrote. "I think it was a question of, I found you and you're my property." Whether it was a sense of ownership, personal betrayal, or the cold fury of a king, the result was the same. The door was slammed shut. The ban was immediate, and the consequences would be devastating. The fallout from that call was a slow-motion catastrophe. The myth about a single joke probably took hold because it was a simpler story than the messy, painful reality of ambition and miscommunication. The ban was absolute. It wasn't just that she couldn't be on The Tonight Show. Carson's influence was so powerful that he created an invisible wall around her. His team let it be known. Anyone who appeared on Joan's new show would be blacklisted from The Tonight Show. In an era when a spot on Carson's couch was gold, this was a death sentence for her new show. A-list guests, fearing Johnny's wrath, stayed away. The Late Show starring Joan Rivers premiered in October 1986, but it was basically doomed. The ratings were weak and the pressure was insane. Behind the scenes, things were just as bad. Joan's husband, Edgar, clashed with Fox executives. The dream job had become a nightmare. Just 7 months after the premiere, Fox gave Joan an ultimatum: fire your husband. She refused. So in May 1987, Fox fired them both. The professional devastation was soon followed by an unthinkable personal tragedy. The failure of the show and the immense strain took a heavy toll on Edgar. 3 months after they were fired, battling depression, Edgar Rosenberg took his own life. In an instant, Joan Rivers had lost everything: her mentor, her historic show, her career, and her husband of 22 years. She was suddenly a widow, a single mother to her teenage daughter Melissa, and reportedly millions in debt. She was a pariah. She later said she always imagined Johnny could have invited her back on the show after Edgar's death and just asked, "Where you been?" She believed it would have been a moment of grace, a way to heal. but it never came. Through all of it, Johnny Carson never reached out. Not a call. Not a note. That silence, she said, was when she knew the friendship was truly over forever. The band from The Tonight Show even outlived Carson's time on the show. His successor, Jay Leno, upheld the blacklist for his entire 22 years as host, saying it was out of respect for Johnny. Even after Carson died in 2005, Joan was still in exile. For 26 years, she was shut out of the house she helped build. It was an incredible display of Carson's lingering power and the grudge he carried to his grave. The story of Johnny and Joan is more than a celebrity feud. It's a tragedy about the collision of ambition and loyalty, friendship and business. Carson retired in 1992, forever known as the king of late night, a master of his craft whose influence is still felt today. He never publicly spoke about Joan again. Joan Rivers, against all odds, staged one of the most incredible comebacks in showbiz history. Left with nothing, she started over. She returned to stand-up, her humor now sharper, forged in personal tragedy. She conquered daytime TV and won an Emmy for The Joan Rivers Show. She reinvented herself as a red carpet fashion critic and built a billion-dollar empire on QVC. She proved, above all else, that she was a survivor, but one door remained closed. One wound never fully healed. Then, on February 17, 2014, something remarkable happened. The new host of The Tonight Show, Jimmy Fallon, decided it was time. Exactly 49 years after her very first appearance, Joan Rivers made a brief cameo on Fallon's debut episode. A month later, she returned as a full guest. As the band played Carson's old theme music, an 80-year-old Joan walked onto The Tonight Show stage, visibly emotional. "It's very special for me to be back," she said. The band was over. It was a powerful, full-circle moment. Tragically, it would also be one of her last major TV appearances. Just 6 months later, Joan Rivers passed away. She had outlasted the band, she had come home, and in the end, she got the last laugh. But the story is a somber reminder of the human cost of fame and how behind the laughter, fragile relationships can be shattered by a single word, or in this case, the silent click of a phone. What do you think? Was Carson justified, or was Joan right to take a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And for more real stories behind Hollywood's biggest legends, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.